All right, you all, here we go. This is my first attempt at using this new software that we're going to be utilizing, I hope, throughout the entire year to record your lectures week to week. So do bear with me if there are some glitches or if I struggle with like moving myself around or getting rid of me or removing me from the screen, that kind of thing, because this is my first attempt. The purpose of today's video is just to provide you with an orientation for the class that's coming up. And so I'd like to start where I always start, which is the foundation. What does God have to say about this? Why do we come at this subject from a providential perspective? And what does that mean exactly? So, of course, the name of our course this year is America's Providential History and its Expression in the Arts. Clearly, we're going to be zooming in, we're going to be focusing in on the nation of America. But the fact is that God is sovereign over all nations throughout all time. And in Acts 17:26, it becomes very clear his purpose. Acts 17:26 says, he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth. Okay, so God is the author of nations. That's our number one takeaway here. Then we go on, having determined their appointed times and the boundaries of their habitation. Guys, determined in advance, like he had a plan here for when nations would rise and fall, for what the boundaries of those nations would be. So often we think that it has something to do with a bilateral treaty or the United Nations has become involved and they're in control. Now, that's not to say that God doesn't use those human institutions to accomplish his purposes, but guys, his purposes won't be thwarted. Never, never think that the secondary causes can outsmart God or get around him. So all of that to say, God has a plan. The nations are part of that plan when they rise and fall, who their leaders are, their appointed times, the boundaries of their habitation. But the beautiful part about this verse is that it goes on to tell us why. Why cause those things to happen when they do? Well, so that they would seek God. What a gracious and merciful answer that is. All of these things have happened so that people would seek God, so they would turn to him. So it should be no surprise to us that when we look at all of history, when we start from creation all the way to the point in time where Jesus Christ will return, the centerpiece of that story, of God's story, that's why I call it his story, right? Not just history. But the centerpiece of that whole story is Jesus Christ. We still divide time by the life of Christ today, right? Everything before him is BC, before Christ. Everything after him, AD, Anno Domini. Now I know today we've got some new designators, right? BCE, before the Common Era. Well, we're not going to use those, but even if we did, they still divide time the same way we always have, right? By the life of Jesus Christ, who is the focal point of history. There are some terms that I want you to be aware of. If you've had a class with me, then you're well aware of these terms already. But just a review, why do we call it America's Providential History? Well, number one, I want you to understand, okay, so I'm going to back up just a little bit here. It's American history that we're studying this year. Guys, that is not to say that America is better than any other country, anything like that. The point is we are going to look at how has God, founded. Where was his hand in the founding of our country? How has he worked throughout the history of our country? Where are the places where we have failed as a nation? We're going to look at all of that. But as we saw in Acts 17:26, God is sovereign over every nation and causes it to rise and fall to suit his purposes. So I don't want you to ever get the idea that we think that America is better than. Now, is America exceptional? Yes, America is exceptional. But she's not exceptional because we're exceptional people or we're just so much more intelligent and superior. Not at all. America is only exceptional as she has followed biblical precepts and applied those in her nation or in our culture. So that's where American exceptionalism comes from. And as we drift further and further from those founding principles, we become less and less exceptional. The other term we have here in our title is that it's America's providential history. So what does that mean? Providence. Guys, the idea of providence is that God doesn't take his hands off, that there's no such thing as luck or coincidence. So providence is the care and superintendence which God exercises over his creatures. This is Noah Webster's 1828 definition. And Webster says, he that acknowledges a creation and denies a providence involves himself in a palpable, meaning you can feel it, contradiction. For the same power which caused a thing to exist is necessary to continue its existence. By divine providence is often understood God himself. The image that you see here is Noah Webster. He is a contemporary of our founding fathers. He knew people like George Washington, Patrick Henry, George Mason, and he gave us a gift. He gave us our first American dictionary. It had words that were unique to America, but it also is a glimpse, it's a picture, or a window into how our founders thought. So as we define words in American history, very often I'm going to be sending you to that 1828 dictionary. There's a link that should be already on the website, the class website. So on the welcome page, there's a link, or it's either there or on our second page. I'll look in a second. Where you'll use Webster's dictionary, because if we want to know what our founders meant by liberty or government or state, then we need to define that word the way that they defined it. Not go to a modern dictionary and impose that definition on people from 250 years ago. I hope that makes sense to you. So we want to be using that 1828 dictionary. Now, I, of course, have a treasure. I'll show you. This is what it looks like in full book form here. There we are. Our American Dictionary of the English Language. So it's a treasure, and if you ever have an opportunity to own one, I would encourage you to. But for now, you'll be able to get everything that you need through an online version of that 1828 dictionary. All right, so that's providence. We've talked about the fact that we're focusing on America. Already mentioned this to you, but providence is ruling out luck. When we look at the story of America, we are choosing to see God's hand in its history. So all history then is his story, God's story, and its focal point, of course, is Jesus Christ. Every nation which has existed or will exist has a purpose and a part in that story. I love this too, so I want to share it with you. This is an excerpt from a textbook that was actually used here in the United States until the late 19th century, and it was a history text. So here's what the introduction to that history text said. Said the study of history is the most fitting nourishment to promote the growth and strength of the expanding intellect of youth. Well, that's a great introduction, right? I like the idea that the study of history is the most fitting nourishment, but I also like the idea, and you should too, that you have expanding intellect, right? The expanding intellect of youth. He goes on, time is precious, and better will be our regret should the days of our youth have been spent without enriching our minds with something of the knowledge of God and of the human race, which is hoarded in the lap of history. So this author believes that the knowledge of God and the human race is what we find as we study history. He goes on, having acquired this treasure, we shall feel amply rewarded for our labor as we discern the hand of our Heavenly Father and recognize with grateful hearts the wisdom and goodness of the plan he has prescribed for the advancement of mankind towards civilization and perfection. Guys, clearly the author of this text believed that God has a plan and that he's involved in accomplishing that plan. He goes on, thus the study of history, while enriching us with an inestimable knowledge of past generations, is also leading us to a better acquaintance with God. Clearly are we taught that he extends his protecting hand over all his children and that all are called into being to fulfill some wise purpose. You who think that chance has brought forth all that exists and that chance decides the fate of nations and individuals, read history with becoming attention, and you will soon acknowledge your error and joyfully testify to the great truth that an intelligent, all-wise, and benevolent being is the creator and ruler of the world. Wow. The reason that I always go over this before we begin our study of history is, guys, that really encompasses my goal, that he has stated my goal. As we study history, and you're going to learn about battles and dates and people and documents and all that good stuff, but my prayer and my hope and my intention is that you come out on the other side also having a better acquaintance with God and understanding that these events, these individuals, these nations, these battles, none of it happened by chance. Some other words that you'll encounter as we study America's providential history, of course, providence, but also the word government. And guys, you just need to know, and I'll hit this when we start. We'll definitely encounter this when we begin. But normally when I say government, just take 2 seconds. What do you think of when I say government? And normally, I used to do this when I would go to speaking engagements, and I would ask the audience to, give me some feedback. What do you think of when I say government? And they would normally call out some elected official's name or say, oh, the IRS or whatever, and the city council people, that kind of thing. That's what they think of when I say government. And that's because that's how we use the term today. But if we looked in the Noah Webster's dictionary to see what did our founders understand government to be, they said it was direction, regulation, control, and restraint. And then they went on, and the very first definition of government that was given was self-government, the direction, regulation, control, and restraint of oneself. Self-government. So that's also a term that we will explore. We'll explore the various spheres of government, of direction, regulation, control, and restraint. Because today, when we say government, we immediately think the civil government. So like this slide, right? We think of all those things when we say government, instead of thinking about self-government or appropriate church government or family government. Those also have appropriate jurisdictions that were established by God and need to be respected. So we'll talk about self-government in our class often. We will talk about property and the importance of protecting private property and the fact that that's a biblical idea. So we'll dig into that a little bit. We'll also talk about conscience, with conscience being your most sacred property. So while private property is very important, again, in the words of our founders, they often talked about protecting life, liberty, and property. Interesting, because that's not what we hear today, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But we'll get there. So we'll talk about property, but that physical property really wasn't even their most emphasized treasure, if you will. It was liberty of conscience. It was being able to protect the individual thoughts of people and not have that governed by an outside entity, particularly the civil government. So liberty of conscience, and conscience is your most sacred property. So we'll talk about that in our first week. We'll discuss the idea of liberty versus freedom. How are they different? Which one is biblical? What do they mean? We'll also stress that things happen internal to external. So that's just an idea that you'll begin to hopefully develop throughout the year, that things happen. We don't look out here at the externals, nor do we try to change culture by changing externals. Change happens, growth happens from internal to external. Liberty only exists as it exists internally and works its way out into culture. And also we will look at things from cause to effect. So we study history in order because it makes sense when we study it that way. We don't just study random battles from across, and compare and contrast. We want to go linearly, anyway, in order through history so that we can see the cause and effect of events throughout time. This is our timeline, so we will work our way through history. I will very briefly, we always start at the beginning, so I will very briefly take you from creation all the way up to the kind of the Columbus period, Bible in English Columbus period that you see right here, because we have some very significant events that happen there that are going to lay the foundations for America. So we move very quickly here and then spend lots of time in Pilgrim, Patriot, and Pioneer periods. We will also be covering the humanities, specifically with a focus on American artists, sculptors, musicians, architects, that kind of thing, or architecture. This is just a little quick example because on the artists front, we'll start with a young man, an American artist, an unlikely artist named Benjamin West. who discovered his gift very early on. He was a Quaker, however, living in Pennsylvania. And if you know anything about Quakers, images are forbidden to Quakers. And so the irony that God would use this little Quaker boy to really become the father of American painting. So you'll learn his story. It is an amazing one. This is Benjamin West. This is one of his works that we'll study. He will wind up becoming court painter to King George III. Let me move myself, see if that helps a little bit. He actually becomes the court painter to King George III, the King of England. That's the tyrant King of England, the one that we're going to be fighting against during the American War for Independence. And he is there in the King's court, but he's a loyal American. And he's at the same time training American artists. So it's a remarkable story, and we'll dig into that and look at some of his works. I had the privilege, the end of his story is that he becomes the second president of the Royal Academy of the Arts in London. So an American Quaker boy winds up becoming president of this Royal Academy, and he's buried in St. Paul's Cathedral. I had the great privilege last summer. We visited London and were able to track down where he was buried. So I'd always had this picture in my slideshows, but now I have this picture, me with at the very spot where Benjamin West is buried and will one day rise again. So we'll study, obviously, the American artists. We'll study architectural techniques from the very primitive Jamestown construction techniques to colonial Georgian period, federal, neoclassical, and we'll talk about how art, architecture, sculpture, and music reflects worldview. We'll look at relevant sculptures and also be introduced to some period music. However, I will tell you, we really do focus a lot on the painters. We talk a lot about the painters because they give us a great picture of what's happening throughout time. So that's probably where we'll spend the most time, are on the American painters. All right, now I wanted to get into the syllabus a little bit. So first important information, if you're reporting to a covering school or keeping transcripts, this is in your syllabus, but I just wanted to stress again our course codes. If you're using Florida course codes, it's U.S. History 2100310. Or parents, if you feel that you want to demand of your student honors level work, meaning they're accomplishing everything that's asked of them at the highest levels, then it would be honors 2100320. Same thing for humanities. So this is a 1.5 credit course if it's done in its entirety. That also means that you'll have longer lectures, guys. So like you have it'll be probably a 2-hour lecture every week that you'll need to listen to. But understand, again, it's 1.5 classes at the end of the year that you're getting credit for. Also, I want you to note that this is not a survey class. So it is not going to cover everything in American history, and that really isn't expected for high school level American history classes. So our class is going to focus on a 350-year period. You're going to get plenty, but we begin in Europe in the 1500s and talk about how the Reformation influenced what would later become America. So we cover that in depth. We're going to go all the way through the post-Civil War era as far as we can get. Sometimes I get all the way up through like the Gilded Age and Flagler, turn of the century, about 1900, and sometimes not quite that far. But wherever we end, just know that if you're not going to be taking another U.S. history course, that I will recommend some great reading, like just several books that'll help you to really dive into those things that we haven't covered in depth. Hopefully you've covered them in previous American history classes. All right. Also important, this is information that's in your syllabus, but I wanted to re-emphasize it, is I'm your instructor from afar. So you'll see me via video for 2 hours every week. And of course you have access to me. You're welcome to call me with questions or email me, that kind of thing. My pleasure to chat with you and to assist you along the way. But I'm not there. So parents, you are the primary educators. So you are taking responsibility to be really the teacher for this class. And I want you to understand that this course does require that. It's in depth. Students, it's not just a pull the textbook out and find the answer kind of a class. And particularly right off the bat, we'll be getting into never before in history. Some of our first assignments will come from this book. And it's kind of big thoughts. And so it's going to require that you make sure that they understand what they're reading, that they understand what's been taught in the lecture and they're able to kind of articulate that back to you. And then that when you're reading through, some of the excerpts, that they really understand what this is saying before they're sent off to answer questions. So, and students, if you're watching this right now, it's imperative, okay? So I know so many of you want to work independently, and I get that. And there are a very, very few that could do it. But even for those that could do it, I just so encourage you to have those conversations with your parents. It so enriches your educational experience. So I want you, parents involved, in understanding or being sure that they understand what's been taught to the student, that they're making sure they understand what's being read for the week, and that, I see a typo, and that they're engaging in at-home discussion and instruction and providing active oversight of the homework assignment, that parent, you are involved in that. So when they finish it, that you're looking back over, you're being sure they really got it and they didn't totally miss the mark on those questions or those resources. An option that you have is if you live close by in the Orlando area, and some of you are already involved in Rogue Co-op. So if you're already part of, Rogue Scholar, some of you are already in Rogue Scholar. And if you are, then on the third Thursday of each month, it says the second Thursday in your syllabus. That's changed. So on the third Thursday of each month, I'll be teaching live at Conway First Baptist Church where Rogue Scholar meets. And that's at 4000 South Conway Road in Orlando, 32812. I will teach from 10 to noon. You need to be there early, 9:50 to get yourself settled so we can start promptly at 10 o'clock and we will finish at noon so everybody can get on to lunch. But if you would like to hear that lecture live, where I can ask questions and you can ask questions and it's kind of a more interactive experience, just know that you're welcome to do that. However, you would add $50 to your $400 annual tuition. So if you're going to do that, add $50 to come, and that's, y'all, to cover me. That's to help cover my transportation expenses because I'll be driving down from Jacksonville to do that once a month. Then in addition to that, for the church itself, the fact that they're allowing us to use their facility is really a blessing. And so we will be taking a love offering for the church, with the suggestion being $25 per semester to go just to the church to thank them for allowing us to meet there once a month. All right, I have a couple pictures of here's the church. It's located right at the intersection of Conway and Gatlin. And guys, when you arrive at the church, if you're going to be doing this, do let me know too. If you're planning to do it and you haven't let me know already, please let me know. I know that Mrs. Briggs group, I have a whole list of students that are in Mrs. Briggs group. And of course the Rogue Scholar students will be there. But if anybody else is planning to come, please just drop me an email so that I know to anticipate that you'll be there. So at any rate, you would park right over here. And the entrance, so here's that parking lot, and the entrance is right behind this extension. So kind of where you see the two-story protrusion right here. That our entrance is right back there. All right, I'm going to switch over, see how this goes real quick, from here to our class website and just walk through a little bit of that. I think that's here and here. There we go. All right. So I am hoping that you've already been able to log on to the class website. Guys, if you have not, again, please email me so that we can get you up and active on the class website because so much information is here that you need. This is what it's going to look like all year, and then we'll just have pages that continue to populate down the left-hand side for week 1, week 2, week 3, etc., all the way down the left-hand side. Every week you'll click on that page and it'll look just like this. But it'll have, the lecture will be posted here. You'll be able to watch it. In another box, you'll have your homework assignment with any of the resources that you might need to accomplish the homework. So I've posted this just so you can begin to get used to kind of the layout of things. Important over here, books and supplies. If you don't have it already, please go ahead and get your books ordered so that you will need that. You'll need your Never Before in History right away. So please go ahead and get your books ordered. And you'll notice that you have options. So we do, guys, briefly use a textbook. I don't like textbooks. I like original documents, but there are a couple times when it's helpful. And so I don't want you to spend a lot of money. So you can use either, I should show you this way, second edition of United States History for Christian Schools. This is second edition, so it's older. And it used to be cheaper, but now I think it's getting harder to find the older one. So you can, if you can find this, perfect. If third edition is what's easier to find, and I've given you the ISBN number there, then third edition is fine. I double checked, and all of the text and page numbers and all of that jives, so either one is fine. Same thing on Never Before in History here. So there's a 2004 edition and a 2011 edition. They look exactly the same. So you may order whichever one you can find, the 2004 or the 2011 edition, and I've given you those ISBN numbers here. I also recommended places to go to search. DLoz.com is a great place because it searches everybody else and finds you used editions of the books, generally at a really great price. Okay, other things you're going to need are a ring binder. You need a 2-inch ring binder. I'm going to grab one so you can see about the size I'm talking about. All right, I'm thinking this is a 2-inch, like so. There we go. But guys, you could go even a little bigger, because I'm just telling you, we have a lot of note sheets. Again, if you've taken a class with me before, you know this. And so it fills up, and if you don't want to have a giant notebook, you're welcome to keep it as a 2-inch notebook. And then if it fills up, then at the midpoint of our semester, you can move them all to, move your first batch somewhere else and pick up with the second set of note sheets for semester 2. I hope that made sense. All right, so that's your ring binder. You need clear page protectors. I've found that Sam's Club and Costco will have the best deals on page protectors, and you're going to need a bunch. So if it's a box of 200, like don't buy 10, because that's not going to get you very far. But maybe buy a box of 200 and share it with a friend for the first semester and see how it goes. Sam's Club, I think they're $10 for a box of 200 clear page protectors. Pencil pen highlighters, 10 stick-on tab dividers. Here is an example of that. They have some that are temporary. You can peel off. Let me show you an example of that. So you're welcome to use the peel-off kind, which look like that. So you can literally stick it onto a divider page inside your notebook, or then these are the more permanent type. Here, if I'm showing this like so. You can use those as well. So a package of 10 stick-on tab dividers can be colorful or plain. You'll be sticking these to a page protector to mark the beginning of a new notebook section. And then finally, a glue stick or double-sided tape. Guys, this may not be as necessary, so have something on hand when you're listening to lectures. But I used to print out a ton of color pictures and things for you to glue into your note sheets. And now, obviously, I can't hand those to you. So they'll be optional, honestly. I'll upload those images for you if you'd like to print them out and have beautiful images of the paintings that we're studying. And it is nice to have a really nice high-resolution image, but it would have to be printed on your home computer. So that's going to be optional for you, whether you put those in or don't. So that's what the glue stick would be for. And then another optional resource is this one. This is called America's Providential History. And I will not be making assignments from it, but it's a great supplemental resource if you're ever looking for something or would like to have one. So, America's Providential History. Some other things to take note of on the website that are already there. Throughout the year, I will keep this box updated. So you have there, you can download the American History syllabus at any time. So the most updated version is there now. I have not made any changes to it since the website went up, so what's there should be what you were emailed earlier. The class calendar, however, I have made some changes, so I'm just going to open that for you real quick. I think I am. What happened? Class calendar? Maybe not. Oh, here we are. Okay, so the class calendar, August 5th, your first lecture will be up and available, your homework assignment for that week. Everything will come online August 5th, so we are just a little over a week away from that. August 12th, week 2, will be available online. Then August 16th, you'll notice that's the first time I do a live lecture at Rogue Scholar, and I'll be lecturing week 2. So in theory, you could have already watched it on the 12th and show up 4 days later and listen to me give it live. So I'd recommend that you don't. This is so that students who were planning to not even begin classes until the 16th, there's no pressure. All you need to do is get your week 1 lecture and homework done sometime before the 16th. So I hope that makes sense. That's for Rogue students. That's for Mrs. Briggs students. On the 16th, when you come to see me at Rogue Scholar, you just need to have week 1's homework done. You'll have listened to week 1 lecture, but even though week 2 is up, you guys don't need to have that done. You're going to be on a slightly delayed schedule. You know what I'm saying? And this is to allow flexibility for everybody. So don't watch it ahead of time. Come and listen to me do the week 2 lecture live. If you have any question, get with me and let me know. So that is all laid out for you here in the calendar. Tells you when each week's lesson will be available and what I will be lecturing on that 3rd Thursday. So September 20th, I'll be lecturing on week 7. So again, hopefully you'll be right on track. So you would not listen to it even though it's posted on the 16th. You would come 4 days later on that Thursday and hear it live and go home and do your homework. If we scroll all the way down, you'll notice November 11th is when I'll post the last lesson for this semester. Now guys, this is a full year course, so there'll be more coming, but we'll be done and we'll all take a break. November 11th, week 15 is available online for you to go ahead and listen to the lecture and complete. So you could be done before Thanksgiving ever hits with this semester. 4 days later, those of you that come to 3rd Thursday at Rogue, you'll get your lecture and be ready to go home, do homework, and be done before Thanksgiving. So you will have a midterm that you'll work on over the break, a midterm exam, but it is open book. I'll tell you in advance, it is open book exam, so it shouldn't be terribly stressful, but it's something that you will need to accomplish over the break. But you've got a long time, y'all. So from November 15th, and then we won't resume until January 6th. That's when your first week of the 2nd semester will post to the website. January 6th. We will be all finished. Your last lecture will post April 14th. And by April 21st, the final exam will be up. So again, you can be finished. April 21st is right at Easter time. So you can be finished pretty early on in the spring. All right, so that's the calendar. Let me close that and see if I can get back to PowerSchool. Not sure what happened there. Okay. Payment information. This is obviously for parents. So parents, if you ever need to know, when are my next fees due, it's right here. If you're not sure where you are in the process, maybe you did a $100 deposit and so you're a little ahead of the game or something, just email me and I'll be happy to check the records and let you know where things are. And then this document, the hows and whys of homework and grading. Please read through this, both parents and students, guys. This is going to help you immensely. I am going to ask you to submit your homework every week. But there's some specific instructions about reviewing that homework with a parent before it is submitted online. So there's going to be a place on the website. Let me show you again real quick. Click back here. I'm not sure exactly what the student page looks like, but I think up here you'll have grades or grade book. So you would click there. Nothing happens when I click it right now because I don't have any assignments uploaded. But when you click here, a new page will open and it'll show the assignments that have been given. And if you click on an assignment, it'll give you an option for uploading your homework. So you can upload a Word doc or a PDF or whatever. And I'm going to encourage you, I want you to do that. Now, I'm not going to be grading your work every week, but I'm going to be looking. I want to see how you all are doing, how you're thinking, are you getting it, so that I can address those things as I record the next week's lecture. or maybe send a quick email back to you if I notice something or see that you're kind of off base on something. So guys, just know, I want you to be doing that. I want you to be submitting that homework online and staying up to date with it. So that's one of the things that we address in here. Is number one, parents, you should be reviewing the homework sheet with your student before they start it, so that they're very clear about and it's a detailed homework sheet. But there's a reason it's detailed. I want them to learn to follow instructions carefully. This will serve them well in years to come. Whether they're going to college or going off to train in some other field, learning to follow directions carefully is so important. So it's a detailed homework sheet. It generally tells you exactly what to expect. So I'm asking parents to please review that with students to be sure that they understand what the assignment is. Then plan to read the source material and talk about it with your student before they begin answering. And I've put in all caps, this is necessary for all students, no matter how bright, no matter how far ahead of the game. I want you discussing these things with your parents. I've noted that we're working with excerpts from 17th and 18th century documents, guys, and there are some big ideas that we're going to be thinking through. You need to be chatting about these things with other people. After this step, most students are ready to work independently. I've given some other instructions here about what that might look like. And then parents, just know too, you're going to be getting a rubric from me. So you emailed separately to you, not for your students to see, is a rubric. It'll look something like this. So if an essay was to be written on Henry VIII, which it won't be this year, but if you're writing an essay on Henry VIII, then I'm also going to be sending you a sample assignment. So there'll be a sample essay that might show kind of how things should look. They will be given a resource that they'll be working from, and the question that they were to answer: how did God use King Henry VIII to bring the Reformation to England? So do they have an opening statement that provides a thesis? Okay, that's how many points that's worth. Parents, do they have 3 valid points that are supporting their thesis statement? And they get 30 points if they have good thesis statements that cite evidences from their sources. Have they included his background or default belief system? That'll be in the assignment itself. They were told to do that. So have they done that? Have they included his background or default belief system? Have they mentioned some of these things down here? Okay, 10 points if they did. Have they included discussion of his relationship with Tyndall? Because they were told to in the assignment. Okay, 10 points if they did. Have they incorporated scriptures that were referenced in their homework sheet? 10 points if they did. Or, if they only did 1, then the parent might take 5 points off. Do they have a strong closing statement, parents? And you'll assign points for that. Grammar, spelling, have they met the word count? Have they met the MLA standards, etc.? So there's points that parents, you'll be able to very accurately, I hope, grade your students' work and come up with a final grade, which you can then email to me. So again, I'm going to look to see how does this look overall. And in the grade book, I'll make a notation that it was completed. But for the numerical grade, the parent will need to complete this rubric. Now, the other parents, for those of you watching this video, the other thing that hopefully this is helpful, the other way that this is helpful for you is it kind of gives you the answers. So, you can look at their work ahead of time and use this to guide them, not pull it out and show it to them, but you'll have it in your hand and you can kind of look and go, okay, you haven't really mentioned anything about his relationship with Tyndall, so that you might point that out in the homework sheet and go, oh, do you notice Mrs. Crusoe asked about his relationship with Tyndall? What do you have on that? Just use it to kind of nudge them in the right direction. Okay, so that's what a rubric might look like, a sample rubric. And then I did not put here on the screen a sample homework assignment, but in that case, I would have had a sample essay on Henry VIII so that you could kind of see, here's what it might look like. Your students doesn't have to look exactly like that, and each of you are going to know your students' abilities better than I will, but it's just a starting point for you to see, here's what's expected, here's what the MLA standards would look like on this essay, etc. Scroll through here. Extra help. I want to help you, so please reach out, email me, call me. That's part of my job, and I'm happy to chat with you about the assignments. Okay, grading when your homework is completed to your parents' standard. do turn it in by uploading it to the PowerSchool website, where I can take a quick look and mark it as complete. Just an interesting little setup that they have in PowerSchool. But once you're into your assignments and you've uploaded it and your grade, if the grade is nothing, it'll have a little conversation bubble, like a cartoon thing. If you click the conversation bubble, that's where I'll be able to say complete, waiting for parent grade, or something like that. So just click the little conversation bubbles that will pop up next to your assignments in your grades, and that'll tell you where we are in the process. Or if mom sends me something that says, 50 out of 50 on this, student hasn't completed this, I'll probably put that in the conversation bubble next to that assignment, so we'll all be able to remember where we are with that. Okay. I did mention here, very occasionally, and I will ask your parents' permission, I will pull an assignment and I'll actually do the rubric for the parent, like go through and just to give you feedback from somebody else. Okay, so occasionally that could happen throughout the year, and so don't be shocked, and guys, please don't be offended either, because the red ink that I might give you, and I'll try to give you both good points and things that I think could be improved, but that's really the only way that your parent or I can coach you. So please don't look at red ink as a depressing, terrible thing. It's a great thing. It's the way you're getting feedback and you're becoming a better, stronger history student. All right, follow up and then filing. When you get that homework back, again, as I said, look, especially if I've written notes to you, your parent has written notes to you, read what they wrote so you can do it better the next time. So follow up on that assignment. Don't just stick it in the binder and be done with it. But you do need to stick it in the binder. So filing your homework. You're going to have note sheets from me every week that go with our lectures. So those are going to get filed in order in your notebook. Let me see if I have a sample for you. Okay, this is an old notebook, so it's a little more colorful than yours will be. I used to do color-coded sheets. All right, this was actually, it was an American history notebook. So it had a map the student had worked on and note sheets that'll look like this, where you're following along with the lecture, you're filling in the blanks, etc. In the blanks, let's get to a homework. Oh, here's another homework assignment that was a map. So because we had lectured right here on Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates and the issues that have been going on there, when the map was done on the Barbary Coast and the Tripoli Pirates, that was the homework assignment, but it gets filed right with the note sheets that are about that subject. So you'll complete an assignment, and guys, don't file them all on the back. Put that homework assignment with the note sheets that it relates to. I'm just going to look for another one. Here we go. So here's the Monroe Doctrine note sheets, and then here's the students' actual work when they had to do a homework assignment on the Monroe Doctrine. Right. All right, I think that's all of the hows and whys of homework, books and supplies. We've covered the toolbox. Here's where you'll find that link that'll take you right to the 1828 dictionary, so that if you needed to look up government and see what did our founders think that it was, well, here you have it. Direction, regulation, control, and restraints. These precepts will serve for the government of our conduct. I love it. There we are. Control, direction, regulation, and then his sample sentence. These precepts will serve for the government of our conduct. You see, it has nothing to do with the civil realm. It's about self-control. His first definition, control, restraint. Men are apt to neglect the government of their temper and passions. So anyway, love that. I love number 3 is the exercise of authority by a parent or householder. So again, our founders understood that there were appropriate spheres of authority outside of just the civil government, that we were supposed to be self-governed, that within the family there was appropriate exercise of authority by parents that should be happening. We don't want the civil government to do it all. We want church to govern in its area, family to govern in its area, and self to govern in its own area. But I digress. All right, let's get back to our website. So that was the link over to, move myself over here. over to the 1828 dictionary. Also, there's a link here to the ESV Bible, which is the one I just prefer, just so we're all on the same page. If we're going to take quotes from the scriptures, let's just use the ESV Bible for quoting scripture unless you're directed otherwise. All right, so now if we go back to the top of this page, you'll see that I've uploaded a second page called pre-class review material. So that means we should be doing pre-class review before class starts, right? So this is an assignment. This is something you need to take a look at, print out, etc. Now, guys, I apologize to those of you that are ahead of the game and you've already been working on this, and I know some of you have. You don't have to go back and redo. Some of you have already submitted answers. I see 6 people out of 40. So you 6 people who have already submitted answers to this discussion, which step will help you most? You don't have to go back and do it again. I don't even know that you can go back and do it again. So anyway, you're good to go. But you may want to go back and just double check this document, How to Do Homework for Mrs. Caruso's Class. I am not going to go over all of this right now in the orientation. But it's very important that you guys look at this and go over the steps. Also, in our class, we do a simple MLA format. And sometimes students arrive, maybe they're 9th graders or 8th graders taking this class. You've never been exposed before. Maybe you're an older student who's never been asked to turn work in an MLA format. So if it's new to you, that's okay. And there's much grace in the first few weeks. But I really want you to get up to speed on what MLA format looks like and how to turn in a professionally formatted paper. So I have a sample, this sample here. We'll just open it real quick because we can. Oops, open. Open. I think it's coming. Yes. So most of your assignments will probably look something like this because I'll have you'll read something and I'll have a series of questions for you about those resources. So when you're doing a list of questions, they're numbered like so. They have an official MLA heading. The entire document is double spaced throughout. That means no extra spaces between this and your title. Your title isn't bolded, it's not italicized, it's just plain, same font as everything else, and you have page numbers. So like here and here, right? So every page is numbered. And then at the end, you'll have a works cited page. Don't panic. I know this looks like so fancy and crazy, and how do we do that? But all of this information, it won't highlight for me, but anyway, all of that information is going to be uploaded every week in a little works cited box on your web page. So all you'll have to do is copy it and paste it into your document at the bottom. But this is how you know, okay, whatever the first word is, that's how I cite within my answers, okay? So you're going to be, like for this particular assignment, students were reading from a Francis Schaeffer, a book by Francis Schaeffer. And so this they didn't have to come up with. But when they were citing their sources in here, the message of Michelangelo's men tearing themselves from rock is that man will make himself great. So they're quoting right from Schaeffer. And so it's Schaeffer, page 71, and with a period after the parentheses. But all of those MLA standards are discussed on the class website, okay, up here. So how to set up your MLA format in Word, in Google Docs, or in Pages. So this should cover everybody and help you get your page numbers in, know how to do your spacing, what your font size should be. These are YouTube videos that talk you through how to set up MLA format when you're ready to do homework. Then in that How to Do Homework for Mrs. Caruso's Class, it talks more in depth in that document about my expectations for how you're going to cite sources and that kind of thing. Let's open it real quick. Why does it keep doing that? How to do homework in Mrs. Caruso's class. There we go. So please read through, guys, the process. This is your homework before we start, okay? You might want to print this out and put it in your notebook. So read through what I'm expecting. In fact, print it out and put it in your notebook so that you can go back and remember 6 weeks in, oh, that's right, I'm not supposed to be just going to my textbook when she asks a question I don't just go look in the textbook and go, I think, well, that kind of answers it right there, and just write, when asked something, the name Fight the Good Fight was a common Puritan name. And write, no. Okay, that's not what I'm looking for. Your answer needs to be a complete sentence. It needs to reflect the question that was asked. It needs to show thought. It needs to be supported by quotes that come from the sources that you're given. So I'm asking you to think deeply and dig in for our class. And guys, there's a reason for that. I wrote it right in here. I said what you'll be introduced to may be an unfamiliar process, but it is so doable. It's a mental workout. It requires discipline, and that's the goal. Because we want to love the Lord our God with our minds, every part of us. My prayer for all of us is that as we do that, we become culture changers. We become thought leaders and well-prepared influencers. But it takes work to get to that place. So we're going to practice as we do homework week after week. There's, again, some great information to help you understand what I'm looking for in your homework. Like when I ask what was the importance of Brunelleschi's dome, your answer back at the very most basic level needs to be Brunelleschi's dome was important because you'll see how you're mirroring back exactly what was asked. Now, if you want to get a little, you can elevate your writing. Some of you are older, more experienced writers, but be sure in your answer it is clear what you are talking about. What is the question you're addressing? So Brunelleschi's dome was important because, and you give your answer, and you've created a complete sentence. It combined two vital architectural elements. Okay, that's great, but don't stop there, because if you do, it's wrong. You haven't told me what the architectural elements are, right? So you're going to have to go on to explain that. Well, you would come down here. It combined two vital architectural elements, beauty and utility. Then you explain. It's a mathematical masterpiece. It's one of the wonders of the world in architectural engineering, and it's a great artistic triumph. Okay, so you've got your thoughts down. Now we have to polish that answer. Clearly, this student went back in and they got a quote that backed up this idea that it had utility, that it was useful. They said it's a mathematical masterpiece. It was one of the wonders of the world in engineering. So it's useful and it is perfect in its design, right? It's practical design, but it's also beautiful. It's a great artistic triumph. So they backed up their answer by saying that it was both a mathematical masterpiece, a wonder of the world in architectural engineering, but also great artistic triumph. Perfect. Okay, right on. Now, let's polish that up because I see a missing period. I don't see any citations. So we come back in. We also have switched tenses, right? Brunelleschi's dome was important. And then here it is a mathematical masterpiece. We want to make sure we're all in one tense. So let's stay in past. It was, right? It was important because it combined two vital architectural elements, beauty and utility. It was not only a mathematical masterpiece and one of the wonders of the world in architectural engineering, but also a great artistic triumph. Notice there's no period. That's because we've cited where we got those quotes. Schaefer, page 62, parentheses, period after. And then the student went on to add a little follow-up. This purposeful combination of logic and beauty was one of the things that defined the Renaissance. Okay, great answer to the question, why was Brunelleschi's dome important? And y'all see it was only 3 sentences, but they got it done. Again, when the assignment's complete, have a parent proofread it, and here again are the steps. So print it out, highlight these, that you're going to read the material, you're going to think for a minute, like take 5 minutes and think. Don't just dig for something to put in as an answer. So read, think for a minute, then write. Then once you have your own ideas down, that's what that writing part is, that's you. Then go into your sources and go, it's clear that Locke was saying whatever, that private property was important. And you've written Locke believed that private property was important. Now go find a Locke quote that supports that, okay? Because quite frankly, nobody cares what I think. They want to know what Locke said, okay? So I've introduced what he believes, and now I'm going to support it with quotes that come right from his own writing. I'm supporting the case I'm making with evidence. Then I'll polish it again, fix the grammar, any of the tense issues that I might have, and finally cite those sources. Okay, guys, this is the MLA stuff that I mentioned. I'm not going to go through that. So the MLA things you can read on your own and begin to work that through. That's all MLA, in-text citation, so read that, please. And finally, notebook standards. So I showed you a sample notebook already. The notebook is a personal record of your learning. And I hope that it's going to be very useful to you for years to come. It should get better and better throughout the year, right? And I mentioned here, the whole point is you're creating your own textbook because we hardly really use textbooks. So you're creating a source that I want you to be able to go back to and use in years to come. And yes, that actually does happen. Guys, I've been teaching a long time now. And so I have students who have even called me and said, oh, Mrs. Caruso, I am a teaching assistant at UCF. I'm working in a history class, and my professor has asked me to step in and do the lecture on the Pilgrims. And I was able to open my notebook and pull out some of the material that you taught on the Pilgrims to get me started. And guys, the fact is that the things that I'm going to be teaching you aren't out there everywhere. So my goal is for you to have a resource that's going to be helpful to you in your classes in college, perhaps in Sunday school classes later on, in writing speeches, that kind of thing. I added in here just so you know it really does happen. I recently got an email and this is what it said. Hi, Mrs. Caruso. I just wanted to say thank you for teaching me history and making us use all those page protectors and keep our notebooks organized. At the time, I despised page protectors and didn't see why I needed to keep everything so organized, because normally I don't look back on my school books. However, I've been writing a lot of papers this year, and I've been working on a lot of speeches, and your notebooks have helped me so much. I now know how to use MLA format from you, since you expected quality work. I also have been able to write persuasive papers and use a lot of the note sheets for references, because my papers incorporate many history references. I just wanted to let you know how grateful I am for you expecting quality work from us. Teaching is way more than just events that took place. And I thank you for making us use page protectors. So, guys, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm just telling you there really is a purpose to my madness. So I encourage you to go ahead for this year. If you hate, at the end of the year, if you decide I'm never keeping this, all right, well then take all the pages out and throw them away and recycle the page protectors, okay? But for the year, please use page protectors. We will do notebook checks once each semester, and so they need to be in order. I've given you all of that information here. So your lecture note sheets need to be filed like as soon as we finish them. Go ahead and get them filed in here so that they stay in order and you don't get things out of place. And then those homework assignments go with the lecture notes that they relate to. All right, that's, read through all of this information on the notebook because that will be helpful to you. Get back here. We talked about these videos. Please watch whichever one is pertinent to you. If you use Word docs, Google Docs, or Pages, so please watch whichever video is helpful to you. Guys, if the format that you use isn't there, you're probably going to have to figure it out. Like do a YouTube search about how to set up MLA format in whatever it is that you use. Okay, but these are the three that I encounter most often. And then this is also helpful. Plagiarism can be a real issue. Sometimes with homeschoolers, we just haven't been taught like what that is. And so you do it unintentionally. So please watch the video so that you are well aware of how not to plagiarize, how not to steal somebody else's information and act like it's yours in giving your answer. You want to cite that information and give credit to those that have provided it. Guys, rule to live by, never, 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 ever in my class should you highlight something from the internet and paste it into a document that you're working in. Just don't do it. I mean, the only time I can think would be if it was from a document we were looking at online, like a charter, the Virginia Charter, and you need to take a little bit of the text so that you can quote that text. But as far as any other resource, don't ever do it. Don't Wikipedia it and cut and paste it. Because I will, if I see that showing up in your homework, I'm definitely going to be making a parent aware that that's happening. So you cheat yourself, and your parents who are paying for this course for you when you do that. So just a word to the wise, don't do it. Go ahead and watch the video though, so that you know some of the pitfalls where you can get into trouble unintentionally and plagiarize. Okay, I think that is about it. I'm going to pop right back to this real quick. I wanted to mention this information is in your syllabus as well, and I'll be keeping you up to date. But if you're a student in my class, then in the spring there will be at least one opportunity to go to Williamsburg and Washington, D.C., and there'll be an opportunity to go to Boston. And if you're a student in my class, you'll be able to take $100 off the cost of that trip, because I really want to encourage folks to come and stand in the places where these things happened that we're going to be learning about. So that's an exciting way to learn and to really drive home the things that you've learned. Also, any member of your family that comes, immediate family, takes $50 off of their trip fees. So the one trip that's offered, get this back up from current slide. There we go. This one is the Jamestown, Williamsburg, Yorktown, and Washington, D.C. trip, which we'll have more information about, or email me if you need more information now. I don't have dates set yet. They're coming. But that one centers here. This is the Jamestown, Williamsburg, Yorktown portion, and then we move up into Washington, D.C. for the last 5 days of that trip. The itinerary looks like this. You can pause the video if you need to kind of take a look at the general itinerary. Here's some pictures from that trip, some of the places we go. And then there'll also be the Plymouth, Lexington, Concord, and Boston trip in the spring. It's a little bit shorter. It's only 6 days total, I think, 5 days touring and a travel day. Some images from that trip, which is super fun. And that is it. All right, so I think you have made it through the orientation video. Guys, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to be in touch via email. Otherwise, our class will be up, I believe it was August 5th. I'd have to, well, I have that somewhere, my calendar, but class will be up shortly on our website. Again, if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to be in touch.